Hello and welcome back to Multimodal. I'm your host, bakztfuture. This is a podcast about ChatGPT, multimodal AI models like DALL-E 3, which was announced last week, large language models, multimodal AI models. We mainly talk about OpenAI. We cover many different things. Every once in a while, I'll throw out there, guess, extrapolate on what all these things could mean for the future. Today, I want to switch it up. We have a very special edition of the podcast. This is like a remote, we got video and we have some special guests joining us in their office. So I'm happy and very excited to have the crew from AIGS here, AIGS Canada. We're going to be talking about AI safety. We're going to be talking about it in a Canadian perspective. We'll be digging deep. And also, I think you all are really going to enjoy their story. One thing that I've certainly picked up from them is just sort of how do these things happen? How does politics happen? Right. In this conversation, I'll be playing the role, let's say, a layman, typical tech guy, tech bro, quote unquote. The goal here is I might play a little bit of a character, but the goal is to understand and to learn. I might be asking questions people in the audience might be wondering, whether that's about politics, nonprofits, AI safety, all these other things. And I definitely think these guys right here are the people to ask. So welcome, Wyatt. Welcome, Mario. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I've had a chance to sort of attend a lot of the AI safety meetups hosted by AIGS. I've learned a lot. I think I presented 2-3 weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. So that's how I met Mario. But how did you guys meet?
We were introduced by Liev Corin. I guess our introduction would have happened about a year and a half ago, and I decided to get involved in the space. I showed up to a local effective altruism meetup, and I've been reading about this stuff for quite some time, but that was the first time I tried to actually, make contact with people in meat space. And one of the guys I met there, Liev, asked, "Oh, do you know Wyatt Tessari?" I was like, "No, I don't know anyone in the space yet." He was like, "You should talk to Wyatt. He's in Ottawa." And so I was like, "All right, sure." He gave me his email, and we hopped on a call. And I remember thinking, okay, this guy seems very, very fast talking and competent and seems to actually doing something. And I was looking for people actually doing something, building stuff in the space. So we hit it off pretty well there. And about a month after that, I ended up getting laid off from my previous job and was looking for something to do in the space. So gave Wyatt another ring and I was like, hey, is there some stuff for me to do? And he did indeed have some stuff for me to do.
Yeah. Fast talking and competent.
I think those are good descriptions for Wyatt.
This is the criteria.
Sure. I'll try to speak more slowly and clearly for today, but usually I'm very fast talking. Yeah.
AI safety is completely solved. There's a bit of a criteria. I think that's awesome. So, but like, I'm curious though, like Wyatt, so how long have you been sort of tooting this horn about AI safety, right? Like, was there, a drought? Like, was there a time where you were kind of banging the drums and like it's just you and this is before Mario's even on board?
Yeah, well, it's a long story. So I trained as an engineer, mechanical back in the day, and then I was heavily involved in the climate change movement because I always cared about global affairs and wanted to do good in the world, and it seemed like the time that climate change was the thing to work on since 2010. And so I gave my heart and soul to that movement. And then in 2015, came across the writings around the future of AI and the concerns around human levels of AI and AI safety. And so I thought, well, wait a minute, maybe I was too focused on just climate. So I took 4 years to, research widely as to all the other trends going on, pandemics, rise of China, that kind of stuff. Trying to figure out, okay, so what are the big dynamics I need to be aware of? Mm-hmm. And then came to the conclusion that, all of those are very big stories. The overall arching narrative is the advance of intelligence, and whether that be AI or whether that be augmented human intelligence, when you get smarter than human intelligence, things get very high risk and also very, very different. So that was ended my book in 2019. Worked for a tech company during COVID and then moved to Ottawa in 2021 to figure out, okay, so who else is working on AI policy, AI governance, start organizing the community. And shortly there, I guess a few months after, that's when we got connected to Mario. And
So you would say, so what was the paper? Do you remember in 2015? That sort of...
It was a book called Global Catastrophic Risks. Because I was attracted to it because I was thinking of climate change at the time. And then I was like, I was curious to see what other risks there are in the world. And oh crap. I was like, okay, so yeah.
Okay. And so then when did you start AIGS Canada? Like, was it like 20? So you said you read it, then you went through this deep reflective period.
Yeah, well, I moved to. I was still working for my last job when I moved to Ottawa. But since June of 2022, I've been full time on AI governance, AI safety in Canada.
Okay. I see.
And that, like, just initially just finding people who were working on it in Canada as well.
Yeah.
That turned into an online Slack community, newsletter, website, and then in April we incorporated as an not-for-profit. So we're very new. Yeah.
I see. And so it's kind of like, I personally sometimes think there was a AI winter, and then I think there was also like an AI safety winter, right? Like I'd say basically up until last December, there was an AI safety winter. So, I want to commend you for seeing the vision, starting something like this, and obviously we'll chat a little bit more about how ChatGPT may have changed things, but like the general idea is you were doing this before
it was cool.
Before it was cool.
Yeah, the timing worked out pretty well, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah, like I remember, because you started in June, I guess, is when you started working last year, and then October is when I joined. Late October, I think.
Well, and you started the meetup in Toronto in roughly...
around the time I went to that one meetup where I met Leah, introduced us. I kind of found the other people there interested in AI safety, and I started the Toronto AI safety meetup, which has since become like part of AIGS.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in October last year that I started working on it full time, and I remember like telling people what I was going to work on, because there was this sort of like sci-fi idea that I'd been thinking about for like 8 years, and in spring last year had been like, oh no, this may be something that our generation has to deal with, and. A lot of people were polite, but like, oh, okay, that seems a little wacky and out there. And then the first event I went to on behalf of AIGS was the Toronto Machine Learning Summit it would have been in November last year. And ChatGPT dropped during that summit.
Whoa.
And the tone, how seriously people took our work, changed a lot from before to after that.
Like just even at the event.
It hadn't quite sunk in at the event.
Okay.
Like I think like at the event there was still a lot of like general skepticism about like, okay, like that's not how these models actually work, right? But all the events after that, I do remember there was quite a lot of buzz about ChatGPT, but people hadn't quite made the jump from kind of seeing this thing was so advanced, therefore safety risks down the line. It was still just like, oh, this is crazy new tool. Yeah.
I see. And then even just very quickly, Wyatt, like what's that mind expanding period of life like? Like how do you, not a lot of people will set out time and say, what is catastrophically risky for the next 5 years, right? And like go through and do that soul searching and think about it. What was that period in your life like?
Well, so I was working part-time doing stuff like working at FedEx and so I could write my book and do research. So it was mostly poor and lonely, but like, I mean, it was also very fascinating too. I'm genuinely interested by ideas and like reading up on, for example, the future of nanotechnology, biotechnology. Like, there's a huge, very, very fascinating, terrifying, interesting topics coming along. And so it was very intellectually rewarding.
I see.
And also just for my own sake, like I like knowing like where I'm headed in life and what I care about.
Yeah.
And having been in politics with the climate change stuff in the past, I was like, okay, so if I were to get back in politics, like what should I be campaigning for and why? Like I need to do my homework before I can figure that out first. So it was, I mean, the exercise was very, very important for me personally to be able to just clarify, okay, so what needs doing, what should I be working on? Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's really awesome. And, there is some debate there's people who say AI safety is less of a near-term risk. Climate change is more real of a near-term risk, right? So it's interesting to hear how, obviously, you probably still think climate change is really important, but also you're more on the other side of the fence.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like when I was campaigning on climate change in 2010, I wasn't campaigning because the weather in 2010 was bad. I was campaigning because I knew it'd be bad in 2050, right? So a lot of it is thinking ahead. What does, if we want the future to be positive for ourselves and our kids and our grandkids, the future generations thing, then like, and I've also just personality-wise always been a long-term thinker. Like I'm always looking ahead, like where things are going.
Okay.
And so it was just natural to like, if you see as big an issue as AI safety pop up on the horizon, like, hard to avoid it. I see.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I've been attending the meetups, and what's fascinating is Mario, and shout out to Giles. Giles, they've been running this for like a year. And so they have been educating Toronto about AI safety, walking through the different research papers, the latest going-ons, essentially every OpenAI announcement, right? Like we broke it down, and like, I definitely wanted to have you guys on. If I'm being honest, I feel like this is very grassroots right now, and I feel like this is a chance for everybody listening to get in on the ground level in the same way. Like, we've been talking about GPT-3 since 2020. We've been talking about, I see AIGS as something that's very promising. I'm actually very excited about it. And like, I can feel the grassroots of something big, something important. I feel you guys are the right team to be doing something like this. Between the two of you, I think you guys make a good co-founder mix. So you talked a little bit about this broadening. So, and then AI safety is, your relation to it is mainly capabilities? Like what really moved the needle for you mentally to like really take this seriously?
Well, I mean, so for some context, I mean, when I think of AI safety, I see it as one part of the like human level AI problems that we have to deal with. It's the first and biggest. You first have to make sure to not die, or to avoid the disasters. Then you can deal with the other stuff, but you still have to like for me, like the AI safety is an essential first step, but you also need to figure out, okay, so what kind of features are we going to have if we have systems that can do everything better than us? How do we make sure that we find meaning? How do we make sure that people aren't left behind? There's a lot of just real basics around. There's a huge transition, like going from like hunter-gatherer to agricultural, agricultural to industrial. That same amount of change is going to come with AI. And so like AI safety for me is like just there's this tsunami of change coming, and you have to make sure we survive the tsunami. so yeah.
What about you, Mario? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think of it is AI seems likely to affect everything else more than other things seem to affect it. I totally agree with Wyatt about, most of my life, I wasn't directly involved in the climate change movement, but I was basically a single issue voter with it. I thought that was the most important thing as well. And, we have all these other risks like, pandemics, nuclear war. And the way AI goes for the next 10, 20 years, though, seems to be probably one of the main inputs in how we can navigate those challenges. If we are 20 years from now and we either have augmented intelligence ourselves, or there are entities or a single entity that's like superhuman, as in a million IQ, whether or not that thing wants to help us solve climate change or those things, right? It seems to be a pretty big input in how well we're going to be able to deal with it. And if, the stuff that we build ends up being, not having our best interests at heart, it almost, it doesn't, if we're not around, then, climate change, I guess, it can still be a problem for other life on Earth, but it just seems like less of a problem, right? And if we get it right, it seems to make it easier to solve all those other problems.
Yeah. Well, I mean, would you say that as well, Wyatt? Like, would you say AI could solve climate change? Like what? Like, I'm curious your perspective.
I mean, at the very least, it could vastly accelerate all the technologies you need to, for example, drive the cost of clean energy, of engines that are down to make it trivial to make the change. I mean, the biggest progress we've made so far in climate change is dropping the price of solar, dropping the price of wind and stuff. So a rapid advance in technology for sure. Everything from like climate modeling. And the other thing is, I mean, I'm using my human brain right now to try to think through what an AI system could come up with as a solution, but presumably it would come up with much better solutions than I could think of. And fully respecting that, climate change is also a political issue and needs to be dealt with, at a political level. If the underlying technology is solved or made much, much easier than like solving the ozone layer, so easy because we had alternatives, right? It's still an effort, but it was much easier. So,
yeah. Well, I'm finding even like nowadays, like I'm able to learn things a lot faster because of ChatGPT. Like,
100%,
it's insane.
Yeah,
it's insane. Like you can approach some level of competency, some level of proficiency. ChatGPT has made me realize that a lot of learning is being an insider. Like if you're just starting to learn something like machine learning and you just have basic questions that, Google can't answer, but it's like kind of, it's like inherent or implicit, it's like common sense in that industry, It's unbelievable that you can go to ChatGPT and ask like the dumbest questions and have it explain something that's obvious to you at the level of an insider, right? And so going back to what we were talking about, like I definitely think the accelerant maybe is at the minimum level is human learning,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Like where
Yeah.
somebody who's somebody who's maybe a proficient programmer, maybe computer engineer, wants to do something about climate change. They may not understand the climate change topic, but
Yeah.
because of something like ChatGPT, their learning can be accelerated, and then they may be able to do something about climate change itself.
I mean, that's affected building out AIGS specifically. I mean, I maintain the website, and I did not know how to maintain a website before doing this. Like I would imagine we
That's
would either
crazy.
spend a lot more money on it, or would just be in a much shittier position than it's in right now, just because. Like, hey,
Yeah.
like, what is this language? That's HTML, dude. Like, it's
Right.
been really helpful in that and a lot of other things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so AIGS is obviously Canada focused. So, why Canada, and why should Canadians care about this topic?
Well, I mean, first, AI safety is a global issue. Sure, the large labs are mostly in the United States and China, and a little bit, but it is there are products in Canada to build AGI. Most notably, there's Richard Sutton, who's one of the lead scientists at the AMI, the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, who came up with this Alberta plan for AGI. So there are people who are openly working towards it. Google DeepMind does have offices in Canada as well. So, I mean, we're unlikely to be the place where it gets built first. And so, I mean, you could say, well, it's not our problem. But, the reason the AIGS got started and was like, I'm Canadian. I started the question, okay, so what can we do in Canada and from Canada to help things go well? And there's a lot of stuff that even though we can't, like no single country or lab or, government can control AI safety, control the problem. But we all have a little piece. And what I saw with climate change and with other global issues is that, if you have a strong national champions, they can really push global conversations forward. They can really, Canada could and should be leading the global conversation on AI governance. We definitely can invest in like AI safety. There's a lot of pioneering we can do with local domestic policy. And one of the other things I really want Canada to see Canada do is pilot a national conversation on AI. Like, given the potential change we're going to see in the coming years, what's like we talk about value alignment, making sure AI systems are valued human values, but nobody's really taking the time to ask human beings what are their values and what are the acceptable uses of AI that I mean, in an ideal world, in pie in the sky, you'd have like the world gets together, decides, okay, we want this kind of future, and then tasks that over to the technologists to build it. Right. Right now, we're just trying stuff out, building. Oh, we can do this, but we're not actually thinking through. Okay, so why do we want this AI system in the first place? What are we trying to accomplish with it? What are acceptable uses? What is not acceptable? And how do we make sure that there aren't bad actors who are using it? So anyways. There's a lot that like everyone in the world has to pull their weight, and Canada's on us. So
Yeah, I think like Wyatt in particular is like uniquely positioned to do well in Canada, just because of like that a lot of the technical research I think is much more border agnostic. If you do interpretability work in Canada versus the United States versus Mali, it doesn't matter, right? Like you can publish it, but a lot of the governance side of things does have to work within kind of the human structures that are in place, nation states. And like Wyatt has a lot of experience in Canadian politics. He's bilingual. He's willing. He lives in Ottawa. He's like he kind of had all the right skills. So I think it really made sense for Wyatt in particular to start this here. I see. It just seems to be where competitive advantage is, and like the more people like we have like him in different places. There's like Australian version of Wyatt, and like an Irish version and stuff. That's going to make global coordination of this a lot easier. That's that big, like, and also just to add to like Canada's strengths, though, I think considering like international coordination is a big issue, Canada really does have a history of leading on this type of stuff. Like we get the benefits of having people like the United States tend to like Canada. We also avoid a lot of the some of the negative reputational risks, which puts us, in a position to really take a lead on things like that.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add too, just on a very basic level, if you're Canadian and you care about AI safety, it's nice to have a community to chat about this stuff with, right? So there's a lot of it,
that's true as well.
If AIGS hadn't existed, I'm sure somebody else would have started a meetup or would have, like there's a sense of like there's people here who care about this issue, who might as well get together.
Yeah, that's a great point too. It's good just being around people who are physically near you, who are on a similar path to you, or you can learn from.
I agree.
Like that was my whole approach when I decided to get involved in this. I like my background's in humanities. I just got really interested in Bitcoin back in 6-7 years ago, and I just rolled up to a local meetup, made friends with the guys there, and that's like how I got involved. And so I tried to replicate that when I first decided to get involved in AI. I was like, okay, how do I do this? Okay, I want to find other people, who know their stuff, and it's really great at the city level, and it is really great at a national level as well. Just now there's a Slack you can go to, and it's also like you can't have the entire world in like one community. Things scale, at different levels, and sometimes we do get people popping in being like, hey, what's the status of Bill C-27 or other regulation in Canada? They know where to go, right? They know the people to talk to.
Yeah. Yes, connecting people, community, density. I 100% agree. I'll just add some light Canadian footnotes for anybody listening, especially.
What's your audience like? Are they Canadian?
Global, but a decent amount in Canada. I just want to say, so Wyatt lives in Ottawa, so that is the capital city of Canada. That's where all like the federal politicians are. It's like imagine like Washington D.C. or something of that sort. So it's sort of all Mario is saying is it sort of positions him well, even just physically being there. And then also Wyatt is underselling himself, like he's got experience like on the political side, right? As I believe it's the Green Party and stuff, right? So anyways, just some minor Canadian kind of notes. I would also say like I think the way AI safety is going down, like I feel like maybe we do need multiple countries trying different things. Like we need to see see some different kinds of approaches to policy, right? Nobody knows quite what's going to work here. I think the Americans will be certain way, they have their own values. Canadians have their own values, and we sort of, in a way, let the free market decide. It sounds weird, but I think you do want some competition of policy, right? And ideally, we can see which policies ended up working out the best, right? So let's say we talked about values, right? We can say roughly reinforcement learning with human feedback coming out of OpenAI or Anthropic or any of these labs. We could, just for the sake of argument, say those are mostly American values, or we could say they are American values trying to emulate global values. So what would a reinforcement learning with human feedback with Canadian values look like? Like if you had to...
That's a lot of apologies.
Or like or even just a constitutional version, right? Like there's other examples like, Anthropic, I believe they train their models on the UN Human Rights Charter, right? So rather than reinvent the wheel here, right? So this is actually probably a very complicated question I'm asking here. That like,
I've never been asked this before. This is
well, and also, there's the humility of recognizing there's like 40 million Canadians and a great diversity of values in there. So if you're asking an Indigenous Canadian or a new Canadian or a French Canadian, this is all slightly different versions of it, right? So
yes,
I do think that the like when you think of the Charter of Rights, or you think of I think general, because we have been, we are. Like almost by definition, an immigrant country, and we're a place where people, the world meets. I'd like to think that we're fairly, I don't know what that would mean in terms of like actual value, but basically like open to the world, caring about humanity as a whole, not just one particular tribe.
Yep.
Generally peaceful. Generally, I'm trying to think what are the stereotypes.
You're underselling us. I think I'll go further, man. I think Canada is like probably the most pro-immigrant society in the history of the world.
Absolutely,
and I think that's great. Like that's that's awesome. I also think I can't actually think of any ways that I would improve upon the RLHF approach that is being used by the big labs. Not that I think it's like solved. I just like I would need to spend a lot more time digging into it. But I think that Silicon Valley is, for all its faults, it is kind of the more liberal side of the United States, and I think Canada is in a lot of ways pretty like very similar to the United States, a little more liberal.
Interesting.
Having thought about this for the first time, like I think actually, it's almost more interesting question if we had someone from Argentina or Egypt or or like India asking how you would compare. I'm almost like, oh man, like when I compare ourselves to the world, like we seem already pretty similar to.
Although I would say I'd like to think we're a lot more humble than, especially Silicon Valley.
Well, you are based on this conversation. Yeah, I guess I'm.
No, just in terms like Silicon Valley, a lot of wonderful people, amazing things happening there. But last time I went there, I very much got the sense like this. They know they're the center of the world. Everybody else is just far behind. And there's kind of like a dismissiveness to the rest of like DC, like politics, like that's And I think there's a Hopefully, I don't know if that's the Canadian thing, but
a bit more humility, I guess.
Yes,
A bit more
yes,
humility
yeah,
is
there you
our
go.
answer, yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, the RLHF question is more like I'm saying in the sense of like it's really about the values, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not really about the technology. So like what are some of those values? So clearly diversity, that is one of the values, right? Certainly freedom. I think there's a certain freedom in Canada. It's not quite freedom in the U.S., especially parts like Texas, but we're free, right? That's a huge thing. That is also something. I would also say there's a if you did do the same RLHF process and collected the same reward data and you had representation of Canadians labeling it versus the US teams, I think you would have different results.
Probably.
Yeah, it would be the exact same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Canadians in SF, though.
As well.
And
That's true.
Labs, actually.
It's
That's
a ton
I'm
of
continually
Canadians.
surprised by that.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's
But I'm just saying, like, and so my view is I think these things are valuable, right? Like I'm saying we should, as a country, strive for our values to be represented, and you can make this argument that Canadians are probably very well suited for issues around bias and diversity. Our immigration policies, you could argue, have been very successful compared to any other country in the history of the world.
Still plenty of flaws, but we're
right, not perfect.
Yeah.
But and given how much the average Canadian is used to working with and living with people of different cultures and stuff, maybe it does make us a little bit more suited for these kinds of things, to look at it from different perspectives other than our own, more so than other parts of the world. I think also, like, one of the challenges in language models, even GPT-3 since 2020, has always even been at a simple level language representation. So there are a lot of languages which, like, these language models do not do well at. They're dialects or something of that sort. And so either at a language level or even at a data set level, I'm curious, if you trained these models on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, if you trained a model on Canadian history, if you trained a model on even map data from Canada, what kind of model would you end up with? If you trained it on the entire CIBC archive, right? Like what, is there, do you think there's some value to sort of like some nationalist, do you think there's some nationalist Canadian value also inherent in this AI safety stuff? Or do you think this is more, extras, this is more...
I do think, well, certainly in the context of AI safety, there is a general disposition towards being more, safety-minded, more precautionary. Like the for both good and bad reasons, we tend to be less bold than the United States. And so I think that's the thing that comes to mind. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on what would be different for?
I don't know, man. I think they'd be pretty similar.
Maybe
That's not the fun answer, but like, I think it would also be very similar, partly because there's a tendency to focus on differences, like just because if there are values that are shared by everyone on Earth, we just don't waste time thinking about it, and I guess these, like, some of the people in AI safety, like myself, to say things that might sound very, very bizarre to a layperson, like having the correct amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is like a shared human value that basically everyone agrees with, which might sound stupid, but like actually that is the kind of thing we need to be like keep on our minds when we're talking about like non-human entities like having values. And I think to that degree, I think that there are a lot more shared human values than people really appreciate. It's just the really basic ones.
That's a good point.
Like we just haven't need to think about it much until now. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, despite the many conflicts, and some of them are growing in the world, I do think with globalization there is a lot more similarity, shared values, shared understanding of the world than there ever has been in the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My personal belief is if we trained a Canada model, there's the reward labeling in RLHF. There's also, we give it, very extrinsic kinds of, this is our Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. I think if we gave it a lot of training data, the implicit values that would be in that data are also very Canadian. And
like
I
what?
think,
Like what?
Even the way we might speak to each other, even the way we might interview each other, even the way we conduct a meeting, right? I've worked with different groups across the world. A Canadian meeting, the way it's led is just different, right? Maybe some positive, some negative. I'm just saying there maybe is also, that's also part of the values, right? I think and maybe I'm pushing too far on this, also like this nationalist front, but I'm also just curious. Like, what would a Canada model even be like?
Yeah.
And certainly, I've spent many times trying to get ChatGPT to talk like a Toronto man's. There is zero Toronto man's representation. It doesn't talk like at all like how people in Toronto.
GPT-5 will do it.
GPT-5 will do it.
Yeah.
But there's some cultural value to that as well. So, anyways, I'm sorry, I don't want to keep harping on this area. I find it fascinating. One thing that really bothers me, and I'm happy you guys are pursuing all this and doing what you can. But one of my criticisms about where things are at is I feel like the industry's at this point now where these labs are completely locked down, right? I would like to see published data with more detail about scaling, costs, what was truly observed, right? And I would like to see more insights around what's going on in these big training runs. I think I'd also personally like to see more data from NVIDIA about how many GPUs were sold, who bought them, all these different aspects. So my question is, I find it limiting the things that can be done if we do not know the things that essentially the American AI labs are up to, right? And so what is there that Canadians can do, and how do you think we approach this problem?
Okay. So there's two separate questions there, I guess. Like, how do we feel about the level of, I guess, disclosure and openness going on at the labs, and then what Canadians do about it?
Yes.
Okay. I can't answer the second one. I can give some thoughts on the first one. But it's tough. I mean, the broad heuristic I go with is that I want the safety research to be public and open, everyone can use it, and capabilities research to default to being less open to ensure that the safety research can keep up. Because there are stronger economic pressures towards advancing capabilities and weaker economic pressures towards advancing safety. Stuff like being aware of what's going on in supply chains in terms of like how many chips NVIDIA are selling and like and how much compute is required for XYZ is tough. And first bluff, that feels a little bit more capability-y. So I guess like you would probably need to. It's hard to give a clean answer on like, oh, how do you feel about the level of openness? Because you need to break it down to subcomponents. Be like, okay, I'm happy with this level of openness. I think they're being too open with this stuff. I think they're being too closed with this stuff. I actually think they strike a decent balance. I think we're the incentives are good for the safety teams to publish their research openly. OpenAI doesn't benefit from Anthropic building dangerous models. I don't think. Maybe it might be some 4D chess way to think about it, but I don't think so. And I think one of the benefits to these labs of doing the safety research is it increases their reputation. So by publishing it, the incentives are good there. It's a bit less clear on the capability side of things. On the one hand, if there is competition between firms, they're not going to want to reveal kind of what their edge is. And so that does help with kind of reducing the pace of, and the number of different actors trying to push the envelope. On the other hand, like as you point out, it can make things a little bit tougher to really understand what's going on from the outside. I think we will be biased just because we are curious people and we want to know. And so I too would love to have all the information you're saying as well, but like I'm not as confident that it would be necessarily good for the world.
I think generally, I guess the idea of open source the AI safety, even open source the auditing and like red teaming of the models. But when it comes to the you don't want the average person being able to make an extremely dangerous model. And I would want the public safety officials in every country to be keenly aware of all the NVIDIA numbers and stuff, but maybe not disclose that publicly. Have the people whose job and whose legal liability is to protect people, like that they should be. Well, it's the same thing with national security, right? You want the right people to be in control of the nuclear bombs.
So and thank you for clarifying, both of you. So now, say you could text. Let me make a specific shout out. Miles Brundage, head of policy at OpenAI. Say you could text him and ask, what should we expect from GPT-5? What are you guys finding? Say you guys had that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Would that be beneficial to be able to contact these people in the lab? Let's say maybe it's off the record, NDAs are signed, the communication is secure. Do you think this could aid and help in the process of policy making, could help in the process of lobbying, could help with AI safety in general, if some of the veil was lifted to certain people whose job is to think about this problem from an AI safety global perspective?
Yeah, definitely to key stakeholders in government or whoever else has been entrusted with the public safety and policy. Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is Miles Brundage and OpenAI don't know what the next capability is going to be. That was the latest Sam Altman thing where, basically as they scale up, you don't know what new magic thing it can do.
Yep.
So it may be that GPT-5 is simply too dangerous, and until we build it, we won't know that. So there's a sense of but that's kind of separate from the point of yes, absolutely, maybe not public knowledge because that might accelerate the race dynamics, but definitely if the goal is to be a responsible society and do all things that are beneficial and not extremely dangerous, then you have to have some adult in the room monitoring this stuff. Yeah,
or just it's just collaboration. I think maybe there's some need for private industry to work and share information that only they might be privy to, maybe even answer questions, because they actually have skin in the game, they've invested in it. There might be very practical things that regulators don't even know, right?
Yeah.
And so just I think there's a role here for industry, whether obviously maybe it's not the best idea for them to go fully public, but to make themselves available as resources and maybe share some of those details.
I mean, the challenge is though too, I mean, that's assuming they're all acting entirely in good faith and sharing all the information that'd be useful to regulators. I mean, they're going to have very strong financial pressures or otherwise to not say, oh, hey, our model is so dangerous, you're going to have to shut us down, right? So there's at some level, you kind of have to have you have to have an adult in the room, whether it be it's a global body like the International Atomic Energy Agency or a national body, but someone who can say, no, by law, you're not allowed to build this, and if you do, we're going to take you to jail because this model could kill other people. But it gets tricky because I know for the people that I've talked to in OpenAI, very well intentioned would want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a ton of stress for them where hey, if we tell government that this model can do this, and we know the government's going to shut us down if we do that, but it may not somebody else down who's building a model. It's a terrible dynamic to be in. So we need some kind of way of leveling the playing fields and So
okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this topic, but I heard I didn't listen to the full Sam Altman Joe Rogan podcast, but apparently he confirmed GPT 4.5, and my issue is why is he doing that on there, right?
Yeah.
Just because you're on Joe Rogan, now suddenly that information is not confidential. I didn't find out about it, right? I've been covering this stuff since 2020. Just because you're on Joe Rogan, suddenly, the competitive pressures don't apply. Anyways, these are my opinions, not AIGS Canada. I don't speak for AIGS Canada.
You should have done it on the BakztFuture podcast. That's where you should have announced it.
Yeah. That's for the regular episodes with just the spicy hot takes. But anyways, so then let's dig a little bit deeper. So some things I would say drones, Canada was pretty ahead last decade. I think our regulation was pretty reasonable. We made some tweaks. I don't think it got in the way of innovation in that area. Other things recently, the media stuff going on right now is hit a lot of global attention. So the Canadian government, by my layman's understanding, sort of told these platforms like Google News and Facebook and all these social media companies, you need to pay the news publishers, right? I would say these antiquated, aging, bodies, and then Google and all these companies said we're just going to stop sending traffic to them, and now it could mean the death of Canadian media, and it was completely, you could argue that it was completely, almost because of the government itself, or the government trying to help private industry, and so. This is not within the realm of AI safety, but I think maybe it represents some example where regulation kind of made things worse, to put it loosely, right?
Yeah.
So how do you avoid? I gave the example of good regulation that I kind of liked. I think was good with the drones. The bad regulation with the media stuff. How do you think about good versus bad regulation?
Yeah, well, it's a delicate balance. The thing that comes to mind, and the what, for example, what we're calling for in our own recommendations for the Bill 27 is make sure that the government has the capacity to monitor developments and react and update regulations, so that if there is a bad policy comes out, they can learn from it quickly, switch it, and move on. The last thing you want is like to bake in some kind of preconceived notion of what AI should be like and how to regulate it, and then have the next wave of AI come out and just totally changes the nature of the AI. And so yeah, it's I mean the most important thing we need is a like a large team or a strong team in government who understands what's going on and can adapt and has the capability to act if they need to, but also to update their laws as they go along. And I it's perhaps an odd parallel, but in one thing that China does relatively well is they're a lot more agile in their policy, and interestingly enough, partly because they don't have to deal with consensus or anything like that. They just say, no, we're doing this, or now we're doing this now. But they, for example, their generative AI regulations that came out, industry said they're too stringent for these reasons, and they did adjust within a few months, basically. So I think there's we need, technology is being developed in an agile manner. We need regulation that can follow that, which is tough because usually laws and regulations are there to stabilize things. It's just, but yeah, it's not easy.
I mean, in this case, I felt they made it worse for the media companies.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like
the Canadian regulation.
The government made it worse.
Yeah. I have yet to encounter anyone who disagrees with that.
Yeah. Even the consumers are less informed. Like we have less idea of what's going on in Canada, right? And these are important issues. So, yeah, maybe it serves as just like a good example of how not to regulate, right?
Yes.
At minimum, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about the recent voluntary code of conduct relating to advanced generative AI systems.
So this was a bit of a mirror document to what the White House put out in the US. And the idea is, look, to do legislation, it takes years. And we can't wait multiple years without any guidance for companies. These things are moving way too fast. So they did some a brief set of roundtable consultations in the summer and basically provided this guide, if you can go on and find it online, as to like the basic requirements basically for building large models, generative AI models. And it's the advantage is it was put out quickly. It provides guidance to companies and building models. Disadvantage is that it's a voluntary code, so they can not do it, and then there's nothing. I mean, there's I guess there's a reputational risk or something like that, but it's there's no enforcement. There's no So
I see. And this came out from the Minister of Technology and Innovation.
Yeah, I said Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Did AIGS have a role with this as well? I'm trying to remember.
We were part of the roundtables they invited, and our message to them was, look, make it as forward-proof as possible. I mean, in the sense that we don't know when we'll reach human levels of AI, but for all we know, it could be next year. And so we need, whatever guidance you provide companies has to be, and the other context too is for Canada, for this Bill C-27, I mean, we're in a minority government. It is entirely possible that an election gets called, and when that happens, every bill that hasn't been passed goes back to zero. So if we have an election, even if the next government is super prioritizes, AI policy, they'll have to reintroduce a new bill, go through all and so it'll be another, at least a couple year delay probably. So I'd say that, if this temporary code of conduct may end up being a fairly permanent one while we wait for legislation. So,
I just want to underline one of the points you've made a couple times here about trying to get people to be forward-looking. Mm-hmm. Like that as a general theme applies beyond politics. Like it applies to politics, but just in general space, I see so many people are entirely focused on what the current models can do and aren't actually checking the trajectory. And I think this is like if you haven't done this yet, this is like I think like one of the number one things you can do to get I think to to kind of improve your own understanding of what's going on in the space is like you should also be thinking about what the current models can do. They can do incredible things, and they're going to cause a lot of problems and solve a lot of problems. But but like just try to like look back at like what these things could do in like 2010, 2012, 2017. And then just like think where they're going to be 3 or 4 years from now. Now they might grind to a halt. We might hit some like fundamental limit that we don't anticipate. That does happen sometimes.
That would suck.
But it doesn't make sense to assum it will, right? And a lot of the conversation just kind of defaults to let's assume like things they can't even do this, right? How do we let's regulate the stuff that's real. It's like understand the concept of exponentials. That's is really important.
Well, and a basic example of that is like hallucinations. Yes, right now, these models are really bad at making stuff up.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why that can't be solved eventually. And so, if you try to pass the law saying you can't do hallucinate, that becomes a very irrelevant law very quickly. And on the change thing too. I mean, I think it's like if you just look at the money going into the space, the data going into the algorithms, the amount of compute going into the algorithms, the efficiency of the algorithms, the amount of talent going. I mean, it's just like all of these inputs to AI are going up like an exponential. So it could still slow down. It's not a law of physics; it's a trend.
Yeah.
But and if you look at the shape of an exponential, I mean, it gets really, really. I mean, so even if you say, ChatGPT is only 10 or 20% of human abilities, if you're on an exponential, by the time you reach 20%, you're in the last. So there is a responsible society, government, company, lab, whatever you want to call it, has to take the prospect of greater than human AI within the next 18 months, seriously. And I'm hoping it's 20 years. But like when we talk about like, and a model that can surpass human beings at everything, including navigating the real world, I mean, that is a fundamentally different model than ChatGPT or than, so it's let's say that, it's, what's coming is as interesting as what we have already is, what's coming is the real story. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's certainly hard, I think, for anybody to even.
Yeah.
Exponential thinking is just so hard. Like, I think it takes so much effort, and like, it's very counterintuitive to humans. I want to underscore the point that Wyatt, you were even involved in the guidelines. Like, I think you're a little bit underselling yourself. This is history here, right? Like,
hopefully,
sort of like to speak, you advise the federal level. I think is quite impressive. You should be commended for that. So yeah, we're talking about capabilities and stuff, and sort of projecting out what they could mean and stuff like that. How did ChatGPT change things? Like when you mentioned, Mario, for example, like you were at this convention of some sort, and through that course, like things just
So again, I don't remember changing a lot at the conference itself.
Afterwards, it was definitely a turning point.
Yeah, I mean, the AI was just taken more seriously after that, and it's also I think because it was a tool that was so easy for anyone to use. It was no longer this like abstract thing that a few geeks were thinking about. It was like, hey, here it is. Like and it was such a leap too. Like the difference between like earlier like chatbots pre ChatGPT until then. And so the conversation after that was like, okay, the AI stuff is being taken seriously, and I think we also shifted our thinking a little bit. I remember a few of our strategy sessions. Well, we started thinking a little bit more about like, okay, like people are taking the AI stuff seriously. There's a lot of hype. How do we get them to take the safety side of things seriously?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. When I guess when we started off in the fall or the summer of 2022, this is pre ChatGPT. DALL-E had come out and Palm and a few of the others, I think, at the time. But there was still a sense of like our job was to help explain what AI could be capable of doing, and that our job was to help basically explain the basics of the science and where things would go and extra risk and stuff. And then ChatGPT comes out. Which surprised even the experts. I mean, even people like Joshua Bengio said like they did not see it coming, even though they work in the space. And then the Future of Life letter comes out in March. People signing that.
Yeah, I remember.
And then a few months later, the case statement on extension risk, and suddenly like all the stuff that we thought our job was to explain from scratch to everyone. Now everybody's talking about it already. Now, so our strategy changed then to more onto the policy side. Okay, so now it's like.
Yeah, it kind of went. There was this several month period in between ChatGPT and the open letters, which was like, okay, everybody's taking the tech seriously. Oh, they're not taking the safety stuff seriously. Yeah, I remember we were thinking like, okay, how do we get this out there? And the open letter, the FLI open letter, and the case statement, which we had our own small roles in. I really sort of like, okay, that problem has been solved. All right, on the next one.
To be fair, there's still a controversy within the community, but at least it's gone from like
it's no longer a fringe view.
Yeah.
Like it's no longer this kind of weird like problem that like a few of these nerds are trying to solve to like, oh no, there's very clearly an emerging consensus in the field. It's not quite climate change level of consensus, but it's trending in that direction.
Yeah, it's also like it's kind of like dominoes. Like first you get ChatGPT, then you get Yoshua Bengio, then you get the letter. The turning point actually when my dad came up to me about ChatGPT, like I'd intentionally not told him I'm in any of this stuff. I'm covering this space because I was waiting for him as soon as he brings it up, it's like very mainstream.
Oh, this was a deliberate strategy on your part to find out when.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So the final domino was when Jeffrey Hinton spoke out.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it was like really like the defringification or whatever, or I guess the Overton window. Like I don't need to invent some term for it. And that's when my dad was like, "Oh, this guy's like a quote unquote the Godfather." We got to talk about that in a separate episode. But anyways, the Godfather of AI said, like that it's he regrets his life's work and like all this stuff.
Oppenheimer,
yeah. Everybody's in their Oppenheimer kind of vibe lately. Anyone working in AI? Anyways, sorry. So now, what I find is very paradoxical about it, right? So, at least in the beginning, that first domino is ChatGPT. And what I find paradoxical is the better your capabilities are, the more people take AI safety seriously, right? But at the same time, we're very concerned about these capabilities, right? So how do you balance that sort of generating awareness? Like it seems to me like you two can come on the podcast, we could talk about AI safety, whereas GPT-5 can ship and it reaches like 100 million people overnight, and then they're like, we got to do something about AI. Right. So how do you balance that? Like what's the role there?
Well, it's sort of not our problem in a way that like it's sort of out of our direct control, like when the new capabilities get shipped, and that like it's of course something we think about in terms of like what types of regulation we want to support, what types of research we encourage people to go into. But in a lot of ways, we in our position need to respond to that rather than kind of there's no point in me like hoping capabilities speed up or slow down. I just, we kind of have to, okay, well, with these new tools out, how can we use them to help us do our jobs better? What does this tell us about, estimates or timelines? And okay, it seems like a lot more people are taking the safety side of things seriously due to capabilities. How do we, push the conversation in a more constructive direction? How do we, best, make sure this groundswell of interest is, directed in the most useful way possible. So I don't actually spend a lot of time thinking about like, oh man, it'd be really great if this capability dropped now, or like, oh, I really hope they wait like, a year or two. I mean, I do have those thoughts sometimes, but I find that's actually not really the most useful thing to be thinking about in my position, just because it seems like very much from my personal position, an external factor. But I don't know if you think about it.
Well, I mean, there's the whole pause AI movement now, which is like this growing to people trying to impact the speed at which these things are rolled out. I mean, it does. There again, with coming from the climate change background, like it is shocking to me that for large energy projects, you need to do a bunch of public consultations, make sure there's environmental impact assessment, the social impact assessment, all that kind of stuff. And same thing with like pharmaceuticals. You need to have like through all these pre-trial drugs to show the safe before we roll it out. And then you have these very capable AI systems, arguably more disruption to people's lives than pharmaceuticals, or at least depending on the content. But then just like rolled out, like they're just like, oh, here it is, and if you don't use it, you'll be outcompeted by your colleagues who are using it. So it's there's a I mean, there's the under quote unquote normal circumstances, like if we were, still in the midst of the industrial era, I don't know, 20th century, whatever you want to call it, the natural thing to do would be to slow it down and or to like pass a law saying you can't do it, and then put in like. But the problem is that there's so many other dynamics going on that like, Yeah, I mean, there's the whole argument. Okay, so if you want to pause, well, so somebody else is going to build it faster, right? Or somebody else will build it worse. It's until you figure out the global coordination piece, and until you figure out it gets into the territory of like, what is your overall like strategy for human level AI? Do you try to just build it and then build it safely, or do you try to stop it because it's simply too dangerous? Like, there's just a lot of there's no it's really complicated. yes. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I actually think if we had a better understanding of the models, maybe there's a happy path of capabilities.
Yeah.
So we released GPT-5, but on a certain set of capabilities, not all capabilities.
Yeah.
That, and so we sort of limit access. Maybe it's just in this small vertical, and sort of, because I do think maybe there is some role of certain capabilities to get the awareness out, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's some balance there. But very hard to do. And at a technical level, it's kind of like we have the model. Like, I don't know if we can verticalize it in that way.
It's also hard to predict specifically what capabilities will change public consciousness in what way.
Yeah.
Like, in hindsight, it's easy to point to things.
Yeah.
Actually, even then, it's tough. But like, once you get in the realm of being like, oh, if we have this ability, people are going to have this reaction to it. That's tough. Like, I mean, apparently even at OpenAI, they did not expect ChatGPT to make that much of a splash. Like, internally they've been using it, and they thought
That's
it was kind of
point.
cool. They showed a few of their friends and family,
and
and
like
it was all right.
gangbusters.
And then, so from what I understand, they were caught really off guard.
Yes.
And in hindsight, it seems really obvious. Like, of course, suddenly everybody has access to this, this incredible chatbot. So the ability to deliberately release capabilities with the intention of shaping public discourse seems very, very tricky to get right.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I agree. I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned Dolly as well earlier on. How much of AI safety applies to Dolly? How much of it applies to, we might have models that generate movies soon, hopefully by the end of the decade, right? So, it's interesting. A lot of the AI safety discourse is mainly focused on language models. But what are your thoughts on Dolly and multimodal models as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally agnostic as to the exact path it takes to get to models that can cause catastrophes. If it's a chatbot or if it's an image generator, I guess I guess it depends what you're talking about when you say AI safety. If you're talking about like catastrophic risk AI safety, the kind of stuff that keeps us up at night and that we really absolutely have to get right, that's I would say probably. I mean, I could see those models having a video generating capability or image generating capability that they would use to deceive human beings or use to get what it needs. But it wouldn't be like the bulk of the model. And I think generative AI in general it's probably a passing phase, right? In the same way that like we're still using machine learning from the 2010s, but it's just much more complicated now, and we're adding on different modules or different capabilities. I see generative AI being that module that future models use to do the text generation part of its work, but the reasoning, planning, autonomous self-improvement portions will be something new.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, but if your definition of AI safety is more on the like, how do we avoid like chaos in the misinformation space? How do we avoid destroying entire industries? I mean, it's already. I feel sorry for the filmmakers and artists and actors because it's already a cutthroat world, and now you're throwing in like a total curveball in terms of like
Wyatt has experience in film, by the way.
Yeah,
so
many years ago, filmmaking. Yeah.
Well, I mean, sorry, Mark, go ahead. I mean, my immediate concerns a lot with Dolly and multimodal and generative AI is, especially illegal child abuse images.
Yes.
Call me crazy, but I think we need along that, there's a new kind of revenge porn, which is possible today. And, one of the reasons I got particularly upset last year and spoke out as I did, the majority of the people who will suffer as a result of these models are women. And I think we need to do more to protect women from harassment, from their images being distributed, God forbid, to their friends and family. These are non-consensual images generated with AI. Somebody could take an image of you off Instagram, and then it's got this compromising image of you, something very concerning. And I would like to get ahead of this. I think, my concern has been, God forbid, some kind of teen suicide, right? Like somebody in high school, their image gets distributed. It's not even them. It's not even real.
Yeah.
And so, while I have your guys' attention, like, if you are in touch with the regulators and federal authorities, I'd rather be ahead on this one than too late. We've had these cases with teenagers and stuff where it's just too late already on revenge porn. I think we can learn from the revenge porn example and get ahead specifically in this AI multimodal space. Sorry, Mario, go ahead.
Yeah. Thinking about the image versus text kind of dichotomy, and which of these has longer term implications. One thing I think is that the generation of images and videos, I think the effects seem to be more localized. Like there's, what you're describing, like really terrible opportunity for very terrible things to happen we need to get ahead of. But it seems as though those don't seem to have the same degree of ripples as generative text for other reasons. The one thing I think people don't think about as enough is the flip side of it. Rather than generating images, the recognition of images. That actually I think has a lot of implications for. It could have a lot of implications for the development of general intelligence because it does imply an increasingly high resolution world model that these tools are getting. So I'm using the word model differently there. Like like their understanding of the world. You can show them an image of something, it can describe it to you. Implies a much deeper level of understanding than just like, oh, here's statistically the next character that's going to show up. So the recognition of images I don't think has as many direct impacts. I think the generation of images is probably going to wreak havoc on a few industries and can, again, provide threats, right?
The caveat I would add there is the all the concerns around facial recognition used by police states and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
There's the privacy concerns were already there before image recognition, but now it's been around for many years now. Was it Clearview AI, and there's a few other and what's being used, for example, in China with Uyghurs and like there's it's
you're right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Surveillance tech is I hadn't thought of that.
Yes,
but that's there you go. Sir.
Yeah, and like there's already existing Canadian laws, and especially in the U.S. For all you people who don't know, in the U.S. it's a federal crime to depict minors. Like you could draw some. That's like a 2-year federal sentence, right? So I mean the framework is already there, and the U.S. child protective agencies have already came out and said one of the challenges actually because of this AI nonsense, these illegal child abuse images made with AI, they're having trouble distinguishing from actual child abuse images. So they are being flooded with AI generated ones. So I definitely think I would like to see something being done here, and also other countries just outside of this issue, they've looked into watermarking of all AI generated content, something of that sort, including China. I don't think that's too unreasonable. I think if we can kind of like a MD5 hash or something of that sort, where you can just check the file, right, some kind of metadata or something. I think it's a good start because people need to be able to distinguish between what was AI generated and what's real.
Yeah, I guess the big challenge there is how do you deal with that? While a lot of these tools are open sourced, how enforceable is it, right?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, go ahead. What?
Well, I mean, it's I guess it'll stop the people who will care about legal liability because they know that if they create an image it can be traced back to them. But yeah, for sure. I mean, for so much of the average, like it's so easy to just and even if an image is tagged with metadata saying it's AI, take a screenshot and now it's no longer tagged.
Yeah.
One thing that does keep me cautiously hopeful that this won't be a total tsunami of awfulness is that I expected the technology of Photoshop to produce worse outcomes than it did. I like in hindsight, it's actually a little bit surprising that there weren't more instances of people getting duped by Photoshop. Rather than people just believing a whole bunch of nonsense because of images. It seems like the default has just shifted to someone's like, oh, that was Photoshop. People are like, oh, okay, I guess it was. So for that reason, I'm like, compared to my intuitions about what I thought was going to happen with Photoshop, I think maybe my intuitions about the problems that can arise from easily fake videos should probably be downgraded. But again, to be clear, that's not me saying this is not going to be a problem. Don't worry about it. I would not discourage anyone who's working on this to continue doing so. We do need to be ahead of it. I am just hopeful that we'll figure out some societal kind of norms and tools, like just being a bit more skeptical of stuff you see, right?
Yeah. I would like some solutioning. I'd like some stuff on the table, discussions happening. Definitely, it's hard to balance with open source, but I'm optimistic. I think something can come of this particular issue. Let's switch gears a little bit. So, what's it like on the political side? What's it like, what's it like lobbying? What's it like, a lot of people who, are listening, you're technical, you're a developer, you're using the OpenAI playground, you got your GPT-4 key, right? Maybe you've been curious. So how does political change happen? How do you get the attention of a politician? How does this world of politics work? What's the world like?
I mean, it's much slower than tech. I mean, it can move fast in an emergency, and we saw with COVID, for example, things happen way faster than they would ever have normally taken. But politics is where a bunch of people have different ideas about how the world should be, and they get together and have to hash it out. So it's often confusing and messy and annoying, and but it is there's no clean solution to politics because there's no single way of viewing the world. So in terms of the practicalities, like effective advocacy and getting stuff done in politics is, making sure that you talk to all the stakeholders, that they understand what needs doing, trying to counterbalance any lobbying efforts by other companies or associations or whatever. And generally, in the context of AI, there's still so much catch up to be done for policymakers. I mean, even people in the AI industry. I mean, I work with AI governance every day. I'm still catching up to what's happening yesterday. There's a lot of what he's doing is just helping the people making the decisions at the political level catch up to not only where AI has been, but also going back to the thinking ahead piece. Help them understand what's coming down the line so they can start preparing for that. And it's also a lot of coalition building too. I mean, effective politics is when you bring in not just your own interest group, but you have you got industry, you got academia, you've got civil society, you got people from various different cultures within Canada. I guess I'm not sure that yeah, sure.
So a lot of this happens, probably the later stages when it's actually on the floor and it's being debated. Now, I imagine, again, as a layman, that a lot of this, is it happen over dinner? Do you get lunch? Do you get lunch with a politician and then you're
emails, video calls?
How does it work? Is it a Zoom call? It's a great point, Mark.
It depends on what kind of clout you have. I'm not getting lunches with the Prime Minister yet, probably ever.
We go mini golfing, we get massages.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's a lot of emailing, then following up emailing, then calling, then follow up calling, and then you get a video call. And it's not because they don't care about your issues, because they have a million people telling them their issues to worry about too. And also, I mean, just the challenging thing for AI and AI safety in particular is that it's so new, and it's not a political issue yet. So people aren't calling their MPs saying, "Hey, I want you to take strong action on AI safety," or just very few people are. So that's not on even the top 10, probably not in the top 20.
There's something Canadians can do.
Exactly, something Canadians can do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just let your politician know you care about this and you want them to take it seriously and prioritize it. Because if you don't, and if they don't prioritize it, I mean, there's 1,000 other, there's housing, there's affordability, there's climate change, pandemic stuff. So helping people understand that as big as all those issues are, AI safety holds its own in terms of impact on our world. It's getting the right people to understand what's coming down the line and to care enough about it that they'll take the action that's needed.
Yep. And so it's a lot of following up, and you have to do more to stand out compared to perhaps other issues. And then once you get their attention, what's that like? I imagine politicians very busy. I got 20 minutes. I got 20 minutes
Yeah.
next Thursday. Is that what it's like?
Exactly, yeah. And you do your best to be prepared and to send them all the materials ahead of time so that the conversation can be constructive. But it's very...
You want to do things as well, like, I mean, like, depending on which, political affiliation they have, talk about, that angle.
Yes,
on the NDP, you want to talk about, like, jobs.
Is there that element to it?
Absolutely. Yeah,
so you gotta frame it differently.
Of course. I mean, I mean, if you want to sell a conservative politician an issue, you're going to frame it very differently than if you want to sell, like, Green Party politician on it, right? Of course, yeah.
This is my naivety. My assumption is all politicians are deep down inside apolitical. Like it's you know what I mean? Like it's they're focused on this, like.
But even if that's true, though, they still get elected by voters who care about their particular brand of issues, right?
Interesting. So you have to frame it, if not to them, at least the angle of their voters.
Well, exactly. And to be honest, like I think it's I don't quite agree that they're all that apolitical. It kind of helps if you believe the stuff you're saying, right? And so I think most of the politicians are
interesting.
I'm not saying that they're all like purely altruistic, and really totally honest and squeaky clean. Like, but I think the public perception of them is a little harsh, and like a lot of them generally do care about the issues that led them into those parties, right? So if we want to talk to, in order for, like, step into their shoes for a moment, like, if they talk about an issue that their voters don't care about or don't see as important to them, they're not going to get reelected, right? Yeah. So even if even if you convince them this is a real issue, they have to be able to put it in terms that their constituents understand and care about, right? So, that's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying they don't care or aren't that. I just imagine politicians, like, they're kind of maybe above the narrative sometimes. Like, they're actually, they know they need to work together at the end of the day. And it's more, I hope they're more focused on solutions, right? In which case, the partisan lens may not help.
They have to balance both, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have a politician who's entirely focused on solutions and isn't focused on playing the game, they don't get reelected.
Okay, so part of it is playing the game, and so that means adopting the identity of the party that you affiliate with.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I think most of them actually do.
They do actually.
The principles of the party.
And I mean, to be fair, too, I mean, we're in a lot less, like, the ideological differences between liberals and conservatives and even NDP at this point are much less than they used to be. Like, it used to be, like, strong, either, like a left in certain things and right. And now if you look at liberal policies or conservative policies, I mean, was Harper that different from Trudeau? I mean, there's some differences, but it's not like a sea change happens because when, they'll realize that to get reelected, they have to get support from the center, and the center doesn't change that much, right? So they water down their extreme sides to get that.
One thing I am pleasantly surprised about is that AI still has not become a partisan issue in a big way.
Sorry, one thing. Let me just interrupt here. So just for everybody listening, so the liberals are basically our Democrats. Okay, that, like, I'll frame it in a way you can understand that their leanings are not quite aligned. Like, it's not quite
they're a little more centrist, I think, in Canadian terms, because we have further left-leaning parties. But
just for the sake, and then, like, the conservatives, you could argue, are Republican,
but like moderate ones,
like more moderate, and then like NDP is left of
like Bernie Sanders,
the Democrat. Thank you. That's a good way to put it. Anyway, so I just reframed that. Sorry, go on, Mario. What were you saying?
I forget what I was saying.
It's actually the good news on AI is that because it affects whatever issue you care about, you can talk about there's bipartisan support, basically cross-partisan support, I should say. So, for example, like the conservatives are typically care a lot about public safety, national security, privacy. I mean, AI is all over those issues. I mean, in terms of like the arms race around AI, in terms of like the catastrophic risk piece. I mean, this is like right in the wheelhouse. Meanwhile, if you care about avoiding like algorithmic bias, or if you care about jobs, if you care about ensuring human rights and that kind of stuff, I mean, AI is all over those issues as well. So there's a sense of like pick the issue you care about. AI is going to impact it, so let's work together. So
I guess it's a bit less clear how it's going to work with the Bloc Québécois, but it's our own unique.
But
thing.
Then maybe Bloc Québécois is another party in Canada, represents Quebec, and
their foundation is to separate from Canada. Yeah.
But then it would be language and cultural preservation.
We just get Wyatt to speak in French.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, that's super fascinating, right? So it's kind of like conservatives, you might lead something with national security. Liberals, you might lead with human rights. NDP, you might lead with job automation.
Yeah.
protecting the work. So you got to sort of, and I guess you got to frame it based on the politician themselves, right? So is there an element with the politician where you kind of got to look at their interests? Like if you sense somebody wants to be the prime minister, like you got to frame it to them. Like, what if I told you can get ahead on this topic? It's going to be so significant. Well, you will be
you also
inside.
don't want to make false promises. I don't think we're going to put anyone in power in Parliament, just the two of us. But
is there some framing there though? Like
It's basic sales, right? It's what's in it for them. You know, frame it in terms of why would they want to give you their time of day and energy to on this issue. Yeah,
got it. And so then
we need if we can get an AI that simulates a politician, then we can really get them paying attention.
You practice with a language model.
Yeah, there you go.
And then
I was going to say these guys will replace you if you don't do something about it. Then it's really
although because the politicians vote are the only ones who basically they'll be the last to be replaced. I think just because. They get to vote on their own jobs, so they'd have to vote to destroy their own jobs for them to go away. Whereas everybody else,
I don't know, man. I don't know, but what if a party realizes that if they get a couple of AI politicians, they can just crush it with voters bit by bit?
Yeah, this is a whole separate topic, but imagine like a language model with long-term memory, and it knows every constituent, and you can text it, and it's got like it's parallel knows all the constituents, all their concerns. It'd be like a hyper-optimized democracy.
All right, real talk though. I think if we get to that point, I'm not sure that replacing members of parliament is going to be our primary concern. I think we'll have we'll have some bigger things to worry about at that point.
Yeah. But certainly,
and what you're saying, I mean, it's already happening to a certain extent where they'll train models on people from certain cultures, like subgroups type thing, whether it be they're libertarian or whether they be social democrats, and they'll train them on they'll train the models on the media that they digest, and then they'll ask the model basically to predict how those voters would respond to certain policies, and it's accurate enough to be very useful.
Yes. For predicting political opinion. I think it was there was a research paper about that. I would also say maybe it's a very handy thing if there was a language model with better long-term memory where it's still the politician, but they get a crisp summary every day. This is what everybody's the most concerned about. Or imagine the language model can add more detail to the sentiment. Voters are very upset. Yeah. Right. Very concerned. This is not even the usual amount of fear around basic issues. Right. And then they can change how they act based on their writing more accordingly. So tell us, so how do you convince, so one area besides general inflation the world has, one of the big issues we have right now in Canada is housing. It is unbelievable. Even with a 200K salary, you cannot afford a house, and rent is also very, very terrible right now too. Toronto is quickly approaching Manhattan level rent prices, right? And we have this huge displacement of young people. You either go up to cottage country, you go out east, which is kind of not becoming an option, or you are banished to Calgary forever. That is the current modern day solution, and certainly you cannot afford to stay in Toronto. And we get a little bit politically correct here with all the boomers, right? All the schools are shutting down. Every suburban neighborhood is just boomers, and they're $4 million houses they bought for $100,000 in the year 1998. Anyways, these are my opinions. I'm sorry. But how do you get a politician? They got constituents worried about inflation. They got constituents worried about housing. They got all these issues. How do you get them to care about AI safety compared to the immediate concerns, right?
I mean, it's just like getting them to care about climate change. I mean, it's hard. And I think, I mean, so there is some hope, or at least some basis to think that it can be done. And I'm basing this off, there's some polling done of voters in the United States in the summer. And there's the overwhelming concern around AI. And I think, and I've seen this also just anecdotally at a personal level, talking to people. There is knee-jerk fear when you explain, so you know how these models can currently do all these things. They're going to keep getting better, and eventually you'll be able to do everything that we can do as well, right? And I think when you make that logic of human intelligence staying roughly the same, AI is getting better by the day. At some point, these systems are going to be more capable than us. I would say 8 out of 10 people say something along the lines of we're screwed, or we're sure. So I think there is a genuine concern around these systems, and I think that is talking about motivations for political voting. Fear is a very blunt instrument, often misused, but there's a sense of in the context of AI safety, some fear is probably justified. Same
Maybe
thing.
People should be afraid of nuclear war. And
Yes, exactly.
People take it seriously.
Yeah.
I think there's hope that they can be taken seriously. But the problem is just it's like it's still not. People don't think of it as a political issue yet. That is picking up. I mean, we're starting to see some AI safety protests around the world. There's a series of ones going on October 21st.
Yep.
And it's like the political reaction is slower, but I think like especially if another large model drops and it scares people even more than ChatGPT. I mean, we're already seeing some action, like the whole the code of conduct for the guide for public service, the Bill C-27, like all of these are happening, because the government realizes this is an issue, and. You can criticize how they're going about it, or if it's not going far enough, that kind of stuff. But there is at least some political desire already to do that, and I think it's going to grow. So yeah.
Yep. And like I certainly feel like AI is very topical, right? Like it's trendy, like it's sort of absorbed the hype of crypto and NFTs, right? And it's kind of like. I don't know, like you watch the Senate testimony with Sam Altman, and you have Josh Hawley of all people talking about constitutional AI and name dropping this research paper, and maybe there is something about politicians wanting to stay in the conversation, and I think it's a huge opportunity for them in their careers as well. But even just to be relevant, it seems to me, because it also seems to me the general public is very excited and using these things, and part of their job is continuing to speak at the level of their constituents. And so if their constituents are using it, excited about AI, talk about AI, it also makes sense for them to talk about it and start looking into it.
Well, and there's one other really big piece too, which is even more bigger in the United States, which is that, when like a lab with a fully functioning human level AI system or superhuman level AI system, the balance of power between government and private sector is flipping. And I think if you're a government and you want to make sure that you stay in control of your own country, then there's an existential fear within government offices realizing, wait a minute, if these systems can really outcompete human beings at everything, then if it gets built, it can be used against us. And not only is the structure of society imbalanced, but if nobody likes to lose power, and I think the government's starting to wake up that, wait a minute, we're losing, we could actually totally lose power to these systems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I also think people do have a real, nowadays, automation anxiety. I think it's a real thing. I think as a country, we should be measuring this. We should be keeping track of what's it like. How do you feel about AI? Do you feel your job is at risk? Are you performing differently at work? Do you feel more pressure to perform at work because you don't want to be automated?
Yeah.
Right. And, I think maybe there's also, like you guys were saying, a role for constituents to share this anxiety, even though it might feel a little bit early now. I don't think it's that early, but you might feel that way with your representative, to let them know, you're concerned about automation. There's lawyers who are concerned, doctors who are concerned, and certainly programmers, myself included. We should be very concerned and share this concern with government, because it will also get them to take AI more seriously. So going back to what I'm saying, the ground level politics 101, the hacker's guide, the technologist guide to politics. So let's say you've had the Zoom call, you pitched the politician, you framed it in a way they can understand, represent, relative to their party and their interests. What happens then? So is it one of those things okay, cool. And then, a couple of weeks later, you just happen to have reached out to them 3 months before on this topic or something adjacent, and they're like, why don't you come in the tent a little bit? Let's get your feedback on this. Is that how it works? Yeah,
I mean, ideally you get invited to roundtables, AIGS got invited for the voluntary code, and what you want to do is demonstrate what you're talking about, what you're suggesting is in their interest and the interest of their constituents and of the country as a whole, and just build that relationship so that when time comes to make a key decision, you're the person they call, and I think that there's you can have actually Ezra Klein was making this point a few months ago, that's a small group of people can have a very positive impact on the direction of policy simply because they'd spent the time, building that trust, those relationships, they're confident demonstrating competence, and then so when the policymaker had to make their decision, they listened to that person.
Yep, I see. And then where does it go from there? Like it goes eventually, maybe something becomes a bill, and so is
bill regulations. Yeah.
So roundtable, maybe that's like the starting point of you're in it. It's like a warm kind of let's build a relationship. And then from there, you have a relationship, basically.
Well, yeah, it's easy. It's relatively easy to get consulted. It's relatively hard to get listened to in terms of like actually, following your recommendations.
Yeah,
and yeah, there's a lot of like there's the consultations before a bill, consultations before regulations. There's ad hoc consultations on various government policies. It's not there's no like clear path, or you do this, therefore this happens. It's one of these things where you build the relationship and the experience and educate the policymakers so that they are in a position to make decisions within government and laws and that kind of stuff that are relevant at the right time. Yeah.
Okay, and then so how do you get them to listen to you? Like what does it take? Like, and is everybody kind of on the same playing field? Like if mom and pop want to speak out about AI safety, like are you roughly on the same? Even though you had the meeting with the politician and like.
There's a respect for expertise. Like they're not going to invite just anyone into, they'll sometimes put together panels or the groups that they consult in issues, and it's not selected at random.
Yeah, they're careful to show, for political reasons, to show that they've consulted with all the sectors, whether it be academia, civil society. And one of the reasons we get involved as AIGS is because, there's this very small number of not-for-profits in Canada that are AI focused, and basically we're the only ones doing what we're doing. If someone wants to talk about, especially anything like AI safety or future of AI related, and talk to a civil society group, we're it. But there is lobbying. So like if Google, Microsoft, and they all have their paid lobbyists to be able to, again, from their perspective, educate the politicians so they don't pass bills that are bad for Canada and for themselves.
Yep.
And so in a healthy democracy, you have a variety of different groups from different perspectives, and the wise politician absorbs that information and then gives the the right outcome. So yeah,
they're basically a language model.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah. And so say you stacked up researchers. Let's say you stacked up. We got Jeffrey Hinton.
Yeah.
Advising AIGS, right? We got heavy hitting names. So that helps a lot. That helps with AI safety. That helps the seat at the table. It's the same seat, but a lot more weight to it. What about money? So you guys had $1 billion. And so the question is maybe even about lobbying. So how does lobbying work? My understanding in Canada, there's not a lot you could do with lobbying. Is that true?
There is a lot of lobbying in the sense of arguably what we're doing is lobbying. It's going and talking to politicians and sitting in meetings.
Yeah.
There is, fortunately, we are still lucky in Canada that there is a pretty strict, there's a ban on corporate and union donations to politicians, and individual donations are like $1,700 now these days. So it's like, you can't, it's not like the United States where you just have $1 billion and here, pass this bill. I'm exaggerating, but that's the stereotype we have in Americans is that,
you have a total banana republic in the United States. But keep in mind though, like the money, like I think people think of like money in lobbying. I think they kind of imagine brown envelopes, which is like, but the money is actually often used to pay people whose job it is to actually, like Wyatt's got to eat, he's got to pay rent. You can pay for things like advertisements. In areas where in Ottawa, they're traveling to events. A lot of it is actually just paying for people, a living wage to put in the time to do the work that's required.
Absolutely,
right.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm just saying, I guess theoretically, you put together the AI safety super PAC in the United States. You raise $100 billion. It's the biggest lobby. And then you get AI safety legislated, right? Like you get it.
Well, and the thing in the United States, the politicians they have their priority is to fundraise because they take so much money to campaign in the United States, right? So they spend like 3 to 5 hours of their day just raising money. So in that context, if you got $100 billion. Here's your fundraising package for the year. You don't need to fundraise ever again. You just pass this bill, and it's not that simple again. But there's a sense of like and so it does work like that here. But to be clear,
give AIGS money and we can use it to do effective
Oh, yeah.
lobbying.
Of
Like,
course.
you know,
Yeah.
like
Of course.
that is a
Yeah.
bottleneck for us at the moment. And we've like identified a bunch
Yeah,
of
yeah.
ways that we can put that money to very, very good use
Absolutely.
to try to get this issue out there more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I, by the way, like I just for the record, like I prefer our system. Like I prefer I'm cool with, you know, there's a certain amount of influence anybody can have regardless of how rich they are.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand lobbying, like this mysterious world of politics. So sounds like sales, sounds like it longer, sounds like committees, sounds like a discussion. Like it seems evolving. It seems maybe there's some benefit that you're there and you also hear the other panelists and their thoughts and experiences as well. So
and it is still like it's to a large extent who you know. I mean, even though there's a limit, there's a cap to how much money a single person can donate to a campaign.
Yep.
There's still like if you're a friend of the politician, you can introduce them to other people who might be donors, or you can introduce them to people.
Sure.
So you can open doors. Basically, there's a lot of the it's still I mean the old boys networks and the insider, that is still influence, right? That's just still impactful, even if it's not money per se.
So what would it take to get Trudeau's ear? Like how does that work? Do you have to go through other politicians to be in the office with Trudeau? Like how do you do that?
Typically, to get his ear directly, you have to be very high profile, and so I'm hoping and assuming that leading AI scientists in Canada are getting audiences with them, but for a group like AIGS, if AI safety blew up in the news as like the hottest topic, and we were positioned as the leading voice and had built up those relationships to prove to politicians that we were a reliable source, then we might get invited to an brief audience with them, and of course the thing with the Prime Minister is that he has like his one brain with all the problems of the nation to deal with. So getting your slice of your problem into to make it a priority is a challenge. So yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, so I think I learned here a little bit about the process. Some stuff less surprising. Some stuff I think it feels a little bit more tangible now. You know, and that also time back to the money thing. Like I think it's sort of you understand where your money is going towards and the process that this money will go will like how it would work. Okay, so then, I wanted to chat about the recent Anthropic paper. I mentioned it to you guys. It was about interpretability. Chris Olah, who's sort of at Anthropic, sort of I don't want to say the lead of that research paper, but definitely one of the drivers.
He's definitely one of the titans of interpretability, yeah. Yeah,
so, I mean, in the paper, he basically said after their findings that interpretability is no longer a scientific problem. It's more engineering. I don't want to say they may have solved interpretability. Like, that's quite the statement, but I kind of feel like it was a little bit implied. Now, fast forward, even 2 months ago, you had many AI safety people. Maybe, I don't want to quote Eliezer directly, but we were, in this world of giant inscrutable matrices, right? That was the running joke, running theme. And we are far away from understanding. I think at one point, Eliezer may have even suggested we got to round up all the physicists and the scientists and put them on an island so they can work on something as complicated as interpretability.
Okay, to be fair, I don't think he was advocaing going and kidnapping them. I think that was his response. If he was given like unlimited money, he would pay them to.
Thank you. I appreciate you added that, Mario. So it's like, I'm just saying. So imagine that we had infinite money, we had infinite power. And we had legislated, even 2 months ago, even 3 weeks ago, we had legislated. And, it's like overnight, our understanding of interpretability has changed. The science is saying otherwise from a reputable lab, reputable people. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt here, given who they are. And so how do you stay adaptable? How does government keep up with these things? And like, how do you legislate? Because in my experience, having covering this space since 2020, I would say the underlying rules change every 6 months, if not sooner. And so how do you go about doing this?
Yeah, it goes back to having focus on making sure government has internal capacity and has a flexible enough process that it can adjust. Because I remember reading there's a parallel with So Google search, I mean, is almost say pre-ChatGPT era, almost every day updated because people are constantly trying to game it, right? And so there's a sense of Google is regulating the use of search every day. And I think if we are serious about government regulating technology at the speed that it needs to be regulated, you're going to need bodies that have the mandate and ability to update those rules on a daily basis almost. And we don't, that hasn't existed yet in government pretty much.
Really?
So it's going to be a new thing to set up. But I don't see many alternatives that are workable. Yeah.
Interesting. What do you think, Mario? How do you stay adaptable?
Don't know. I guess okay. Sorry. I'm trying to drill into the interpretability paper specifically, and I guess it seems a little early to see exactly how. I mean, I can mirror a lot of echo a lot of Wyatt's comments on adaptability, just because again the space moves so fast. We have these political systems that were designed, from the 1800s, back when it took weeks for a message to travel across the country, right? Like, and so they're just not designed to keep up with this pace of development. And it's great that we've got this breakthrough interpretability, but then there's going to be several steps from like, okay, great, now it's the engineering problem. We solve the engineering problem. Okay, we have a great scientific understanding of like how these things work under the hood. Then like there's got to be some connection to like, okay, how do you use that information to then ensure that the models behave safely? Because just because it's no longer a total black box, it doesn't mean that there are no safety issues. So there's a question of like, how do you use these tools then to keep them safer, and then how do you make sure those tools are being used by everyone who has relevant capabilities? It's like it's too early to say how that specific technique ties in. As Wyatt says, we just need to make sure that the structures we put in place are flexible enough to deal with them when we do figure that out. Yeah,
I guess the parallel that comes to mind would be like as if in the 80s somebody came up with a super efficient solar cell, for climate change, so you now have a solution to get off fossil fuels, but you still have all the work of implementing that, making sure it's and there's just a lot of it's
As a great analogy, cost of solar power is plummeting, but there's a lot of other steps that need to happen before we can actually just make everything run on solar. Right?
The work isn't over.
Yeah.
Okay, I could see that. I don't like this loop where goalposts keep moving, right? And essentially, you can argue AI safety people are incentivized to keep moving the goalposts, right? Or to keep fear mongering, or whatever, right? Like you can argue there's nonprofits whose job is to solve homelessness. They've been doing it for like 500 years or something, and they need more and more money every year. And this is not just a nonprofit issue.
Let me push back on this though. Like homelessness has improved a lot over the last couple hundred years, right? Like sorry, this isn't a comment about homelessness in general, but like I don't think we're going to ever get to a point where there's actually zero risk from AI. We can just let her coast. It's like nuclear risk. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where there's no chance of a nuclear attack ever happening. Even if we get rid of all the nukes, the knowledge is still out there. Assuming our technology doesn't regress. So it is good to be cautious that what's the old quote? It's like like a man who lives to fight an enemy has a vested interest in keeping that enemy alive. Like sure, don't ask your barber if you need a haircut. Be cautious about it. At the same time. Don't over adjust on that, because it's unlikely we're ever going to get to a point where like boom, AI safety has been solved forever. We don't need to work on it or worry anymore.
Well, and I think was it Mustafa Suleyman in his recent book was pointing out that the AI safety is not something you solve once. It's something you keep solving. It's like the nuclear recipes. Like
exactly.
Because you're right. It will continue progressing. We'll need new whatever.
Every new update to the system will need to be proven to be safe and not hacked. And like I said,
I guess at some level, my concern is just government waste, inefficiency, because they need a reason to exist, right? They're going to continue making maybe nonsense regulations, right? And then if you talk about defunding them or shutting them down, it's pandemonium, right? Like like they will say, the whole country is going to fall apart. It's a national security, whatever, right? And so I guess it's more about the real question in order to avoid bloat is how do you stay lean and adaptable, right? Will there ever be a point, for example, like I would assume typically government, you're like, all right, AI safety, we made a lot of progress, industry's happy, public is safer. Let's scale up. We need hundreds of government employees. We need a whole department, right? Do you think maybe some kind of future government department should always stay 22 employees maximum? Right. So it doesn't. So it stays lean. It stays adaptable. It stays.
Well, yeah, you want to be adaptable, but like putting a cap like that is almost like the opposite of adaptable in that, like, okay, I agree. You want to find a balance between being able to adjust with, where the technology goes, because we don't know. But you also don't want it to get out of hand. Now, luckily, I think we're pretty far from AI safety, eating up too much of the government's budget, I think.
Oh, well, and the amount of people,
like
right now, it's the amount of people working on AI in government, if I'm not mistaken, it's like Nice said, is probably in the low dozens, if that. Probably
like globally, right?
No, but in Canada, just like, and I think that compared to like the United States or
work on AI safety specifically.
No, AI safety, just AI in general.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was going to say that seems like an overestimate. Yeah.
No, but in other countries, it's already in the hundreds. So I mean, we're and for example, to fair on like C27 and the voluntary code, I mean, it's literally a teams of like 5 or 6 people who are doing all this work, and they're like overworked, and and it's like you need. Like this is a massive problem. You need a proper team, and also the talent to do it, which is another problem. Yeah.
To your point, there is a risk of there turning into like a bullshit industry of people who fit funding for their jobs to find more funding for et cetera, that kind of thing.
Yes.
I just think we're very, very far from that point,
true.
and the risks of not being not enough being done are much higher.
If anything, heavily underfunded across. Every
this
single.
This is the most neglected issue, in my opinion. This is.
I would 100%. I would agree.
To work on it. Yeah.
I guess all I'm saying is like, maybe what I'm saying is, if culturally we want to stay adaptable and lean, maybe it would be good to constantly consider scaling up, constantly question it. Right? Like, do we need a whole army of comms people? Do we need this whole army of administrators?
Quality over quantity, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you want a certain kind of talent density, right? Do you want always this department is lean but talent dense? Like, what does adaptable look like, right? Like,
well, one of the ways it looks like is so. For example, if in the bill you set up an AI safety commission, one of the things with legislation is you can do these sunset clauses where this bill expires or whatever after 3 to 5 years, and you're forced to either decide to renew it or so you can put in these things where it's right. They have to pass a new bill to get it to, and that's where you can like force some leaning of the system, because that's just true. I mean, the natural process is to bloat, and then eventually if you get too big, the bloating itself is a risk because you start losing communication between people, and it gets so
I see.
Yeah,
I see. That's a great mechanism that you're describing.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are different mechanisms, different tools at our disposal.
Yeah.
What would a AI safety government adaptable department? How else would it look like? So I imagine they have a series of crawlers which are constantly crawling archive, and essentially they spend 6 hours a day just reading research papers and talking about them. I imagine they get like some red carpet access to red team. That's quite the bar. They get red carpet. They get
red team carpet access.
Red team red carpet access. To the OpenAI just trained GPT-5. This is the raw, no RLHF. They need Canadian team coming in, right? We know the training was done. It started. We were involved in the process. We knew it was done, and so they also get access early. So then they can start thinking about maybe the legislative framework or some guidelines or what Canadians should be concerned about, or maybe even advising OpenAI if asked. So. Is it crazy that you'd have a department constantly reading archive and discussing it?
You would want some people in the department, meant to be subject matter experts.
Interesting.
Well, the big thing is you need enough internal expertise to know whether the experts who are talking to are BSing you or not, right? And this is a big problem with tech in general, which is the contractor from Oracle or from some big tech company will say, you need this $100 million system because it's the only way out there. Unless you have internal capacity within government to say, no, this is actual, then you get taken for a ride. I actually, so interestingly enough, so we're putting out a white paper on October 16th, I'm not sure, and the first item we're calling for is a central AI agency at the top of government, and they're similar to what you're talking about, monitor developments in the space, coordinate action across government and with provinces as well, and keep leadership informed as to, so this is basically where AI is at and where it's headed. And then separately from that, have a proper AI commission, which would be a larger body housed in ISED, the Ministry of Industry, whose job would be to manage things like regulations, licensing, working with industry to provide them the support they need, so then that would be more. That body would have the technical expertise of like being able to test the systems or being able to hire contractors who can do test the systems and manage sort of the that kind of thing. And so you have like the coordination body at the top and the more larger technical team. And I said
Yep. Yeah, I definitely think it is hard to know what is high signal. Like even if you read every single archive paper, I think you might confuse yourself. So I agree. Like it's kind of like you want experts who are good at spotting experts, or you want them ideally. Though you want the experts or the insiders in your team. I think there's some value to government trying to train language models of their own, right? Maybe doing a few large scale runs. They don't need to publish those models, but just to get some hands-on experience on that side. I would imagine the experts already have done that, but it's these kinds of like. I think it has to be also very ground level, right? Like I don't think it can just be high level. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You need government would need to be more in the nitty gritty. What about salaries? So do you think salaries could help? Like AI department.
Yeah, this is a big challenge with the government industry in general. I think I saw a few rather strong examples of this from the UK, I think, where they were trying to hire someone to run their like cybersecurity and they were paying them like, a fifth of what they'd be making in industry. This is like, it's something that I think a lot of governments need to improve on. It's not an AI specific thing. Yeah. From what I understand, Singapore seems to be a place that gets this really right, is that they, tend to pay rather high salaries to their public servants and politicians, and then they're able to attract more competent people. Although, that does come with some other challenges. But that's definitely going to be one of the tough things. How do you find someone who really is an expert in the field? How do you properly incentivize them to work in government instead of, being on the cutting edge in the exciting industry?
I think it's not even just the money too. I mean, poaching. I mean, right now, like OpenAI and the cutting edge labs, they're all. I mean, they're a lot of people want to work there because it is cutting edge and because they get to be the first to build AGI or whatever it is. And so you have to. And I think even like their labs are advertising how much compute they have as a way to show you want to work with us because we can actually train larger systems. So there's a sense of even if you have the money to pay them, you have to and I think in general too, just I mean like there are so few people who have the knowledge to like around these systems, and you talk about like being able to review these systems, like to be able to read archive and know what that means, like what that Anthropic paper means.
Yes,
that takes maybe not a PhD, but it certainly takes a lot of knowledge, right? Domain knowledge, there is no magic bullet to this. Basically, the government's going to have to train them themselves, or at least work with industry to train them quickly, because the people don't exist basically in terms of you want a strong team. Yeah, so
that's true. Yeah, they need Giles. That's who they need, and Mario. So what about compute? Like I maybe the salaries are let's say 100K, right? Decent benefits. But the compute that the government could connect you with, right? Let's say hundreds of millions of dollars worth in compute, so you can do experiments in AI safety that you could not do anywhere else in the country, maybe in the world. Is that something the government could do to incentivize people to join the lab, to join this department?
Well, it's another money issue, right? Like it's not cheap.
And they'd also have to outcompete Google and others to buy NVIDIA and AMD, whatever it is.
Sure.
It's just the sense of like even if they started right now with like $20 billion, it would take them a few years to catch up.
Okay. Yeah, and that's assuming they were able to attract, managerial expertise. Like,
at a time when they're trying to cut federal budget or expenditures by $15 billion. So
I would love to be in a position to consider this, where the government is willing to allocate that level of budget, and we have to consider whether we want to do this or use it in some other way. But just at this point, like we're so far away from getting like even a tiny fraction of that. It seems a long ways away at best.
You need to move the needle somehow, right? And like, these are some of the core things like government salaries and stuff where, maybe there's some exceptions that need to be made here, right? Like for AI safety and all these things. So you mentioned, the challenges around even just talent in Canada, building that AI safety talent or getting trained up by people who have that talent. What are some other challenges of starting something like AIGS specifically in Canada? What are the Canadian specific challenges?
Brain drain to the States, I think, is a big part of it. Like,
I mean, Trump helped, but yeah. No, actually,
America's losses are gain when it comes to high skilled immigration. Yeah,
interesting.
That's part of it. I think. I mean, that's probably the main one in a lot of ways. Like, partly just because the labs in the United States have been so successful with this stuff.
And also money. I mean, in terms of like for a not-for-profit like us, raising money is harder when you have fewer people to raise money from. So and also just the money that's in Silicon Valley tends to stay in the U.S. And because we're a Canadian organization, we're working with the Canadian government. I don't want to be taking foreign money to do that. So like there's a sense of like that shrinks our pool to
Yeah, there's also been a shift from academia towards industry in terms of building the cutting edge. And that that also means a shift away from a big change in profit versus nonprofit motives for where the funding comes from.
Yeah,
Canada is where the deep learning revolution kicked off, right? And it was in places like Toronto and Montreal.
Yep.
Canada's no longer the cutting edge of capabilities. I think a lot of the academic institutions are pivoting to actually focus a bit more on more pressing AI safety research. But that is a real dynamic as well.
Yeah, U of T has a growing number of people, PhDs and profs working on it.
It's the new Schwartz-Reisman Institute, and they've had their eye on the ball for quite a while. So shout out to them.
Yeah. So funding, maybe some stuff around awareness, maybe, right? Like you might know.
I don't know. Is there a significant difference between Canadian and Americans in awareness of the issue? I haven't noticed a big difference between those two.
Okay.
I possibly just because the lab, the frontier labs aren't here. And like the conversations that like the rumors you're getting from like the White House and even from the UK are typically they're talking more openly about safety than in Canada. So
okay, I see. And also Canada's a big country, smaller population. It's more spread out. Like we're doing these events in Toronto. We're organizing this. AIGS has representation, I believe, all throughout the country. But it would be nicer in some sense if Canada was smaller. I don't know. Because more people would get involved. I would love to be able
to just pop over to Vancouver, for an hour or two and come back. That'd be great. We got a lot of members there. Victoria, places like Saskatoon, Edmonton. It's a bit of a stretch going. Yeah.
Okay, and then so long term, what is the vision for AIGS Canada? Where do you see, assuming happy path, 4 to 10 years? What would you like to see?
Well,
Prime Minister Tessari,
cabinet, minimum cabinet position.
Yeah, sure, Minister of AI. There we go.
Hey, I like the sound of that.
I like the UAE has a ministry of AI. I'm not sure how useful it would be for Canada, but for us, I mean, like we're trying to fill the gap of right now. There's no real citizen voice, or at least no informed citizen voice, talking about AI safety and the future of AI and AI governance in general to governments, and so trying to be there for government when they want feedback from society, and also just generally, I mean. Making sure that like the best available policies and thought leadership is in the hands of politicians. And like pie in the sky for us is everybody in government, in politics, in society is aware of the issues and able to make decisions in their own domain that are effective and are pushing in the right direction. So I mean that's and also as a organization ourselves, I mean we are basically the hub for everybody who cares about AI safety and for working on AI governance and civil society. So if we can become, or at least if there can be in Canada, a central place where anybody who wants to get involved can just turn to us and have a central place to chat with people about the issue, find local collaborators, find support for whatever the projects they're working on. Then being that space for Canadians and the other piece. So.
Yeah. What about you, Mario? Anything you want to add? Long term,
I think Wyatt did a good job there. I mean, I like there are a lot of things I would like to see, but they're a little bit outside the scope of AIGS. I'm working on a few more side projects. While Wyatt is 100% AIGS focused. So, I think you nailed it for the AIGS side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think even just, having some proxy to raise issues, right, around AI, whatever it is, privacy, safety, existential risk. I talked a little bit about like automation anxiety, and just sort of knowing that, this is something that the politicians are aware of. There's some way that these issues can be raised to them. I wouldn't mind seeing, research coming out of AIGS around some of these things. If you guys could hire analysts or researchers, you mentioned a white paper coming up and stuff like that,
Yes,
right? Like,
yeah.
But a lot of these are funding questions, right? Like,
and right now we're very funding constrained. But this fall, nonetheless, we're focused on clarifying what it is we're calling on government to do. So the white paper is the bigger overall plan, and then we'll be giving oral testimony, or hopefully give oral testimony to committee in November on Bill C-27, and so we'll be submitting a detailed brief for that as well. So right now we're focused on just clarifying, okay, what should people be doing right now? What should government be doing right now? And then moving into next year is more like engaging the public, trying to pilot that national conversation on AI, see what how do you even talk to people about these complicated topics in a way that is constructive, and start getting movement building, I guess is the word. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're just approaching the end. So, we talked about a few ways people can get involved. So reaching out to your representative. What else can you think of? How can people get involved with AIGS in Canada as well as in AI safety in general in Canada?
Well, join our community. Check out AIGS.ca. Get involved button. You can join our Slack. To reach out to us, we do free consultations with people. We can talk to you about what position you're in, what your concerns are, what your background is, and what degree involvement you want to have, and we can direct you towards different efforts that you may want to help with. That's why one of the reasons why we exist. Yeah.
In short, join us. Yeah.
Messaging your political representation, like your member of parliament, and like letting them know you care about it. That helps a tremendous amount. I don't know. Talk to other people about it. This is a real issue that is relative to how important it is. This is by far the most neglected issue on earth right now. I place a lot of confidence in that. And so the more people are paying attention to it, the better.
Yep. And then I will just say it explicitly: donate.
Thank you.
Donate to AIGS. They're educating the community, raising awareness about it. They're connecting different people working on AI safety to sort of helping accelerate it. And, both of these guys work for the nonprofit. And so if you want to support what they're doing and support this topic, and, you want more government involvement, or you want the government to have even awareness on this issue, I think it's a very optimal thing to do is to donate to both of them, and also connect. If you know somebody, I don't know, like a rich uncle kind of thing who, cares about AI safety or something, the money's being used very efficiently and it could go a really long way. And it also allows you both to plan really long term in the ways that are needed if you know that money is less of a concern. And, having seen this organization, they're really bootstrapping, they really care about this topic, right? I think, I think the best thing you can do is just support people about these kinds of things with money. It's the easiest and the best way to help this cause. So I'll mention that now. Real quick, tell us about the idea behind Trajectory.
Sure. Yeah, this is a little separate from AIGS, but this is the Trajectory office that we're in right now. As a project myself, and Jide Alaga is a researcher here in Toronto, and it was originally his idea, and the two of us applied for a grant. We got funding for a co-working space here in Toronto for people working on AI safety related stuff, because we knew that there was a smattering of individuals in the Greater Toronto area that we're working on AI safety to various degrees, but there wasn't, it can be tough if you're an independent researcher working at home, or no proper resources. So if you are doing anything that's related to AI safety and are interested in getting a membership here, we would love to have you come co-work with us. Or you could also just swing by and say hi sometimes. When is this getting published? this podcast.
Maybe in like a week or two.
Cool. All right. Yeah, we should be officially announced by then.
Okay,
This is a brand new effort that we're just launching here.
We got the exclusive.
Yeah.
There you go.
The exclusive is coming
Yeah,
out.
this is first
Multimodal.
First public conversation about it. Yeah,
There you go.
This is it.
There you go.
This is basically Sam Almond on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
This is,
You got this little thing I'm cooking up. Is trajectory 4.5.
There you go. Yeah,
I can confirm.
Yeah.
But no, it's a fantastic office space and plenty of space. We are right near St. Andrew Station in Toronto. Come give us a look. And this is also where we host our AI safety meetups now for the Toronto AI safety meetup.
Yeah, definitely. And like
Wednesday evenings.
AI safety meetup, if you're in the Greater Toronto area, is also a great way to just even get more exposure, connect. I'm usually there, and Mario's definitely there, and so is Giles. Again, just to connect and learn about these topics. Like if you're new to it, it's probably the ideal starting point to sort of.
It's great. Yeah. I think
like,
people are welcoming. Well, so like a couple of our members end up going through the Ceramats program and are now full-time researchers. So it's it's a good time.
And I would just say too, I'm at the Trajectory office, and one thing I've really benefited from is the density, like just to be able to turn different people, learn from them, see what they're doing, what they're thinking about, even just a place to talk about papers and get other people's opinions on the paper and what they mean. So these are the kinds of opportunities and the density that lead to very serendipitous, powerful kinds of outcomes. And so I love the idea of the Trajectory office. I think I really encourage it. I think it's a great idea on your part. And so anyways, we are at the end. Was there anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to add? Any questions for me? Anything
Thanks for doing this, man. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And always, I guess I like to end on a note of hope, because I definitely it can easily be scared by AI stuff and safety in particular. And I maintain my belief in humanity's ability to deal with this challenge. So.
Okay.
The good outcomes are really good, people.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, we didn't get much time to talk about the positives of AI.
Episode 2, baby.
Yeah. Episode 2. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know, like it's if you get AI safety right, then we have all these abundance and maybe.
I mean, there's still the AI governance piece to get right as well, but if you get both of those right, then there's a lot of
And I'm sure you guys are very excited about that too, right?
Yes,
so
yes,
unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to talk too much about that,
Yeah.
But it's there. And then anything else on my end, I'm top of the brain lately. It's just been this Anthropic paper. Like I'm giddy about it, and like.
You can present on it at the AI safety meetup in a couple weeks. How about that?
No, because
No,
this
why
is
not?
this is really over my head.
This is a Giles one. This is Giles.
And also like I actually talked to Giles about it, and he gave me some other pointers about it too.
Yeah.
We've referred to him a bunch. We haven't explained who he is on this podcast. He's the other guy I've been running the Toronto AI safety meetup with. And he's
He's an expert.
He's the brains of the organization.
The implications of that paper, like, and maybe this is like another episode, but they are quite vast. Not just beyond even AI safety, like maybe even capabilities. I think we might have like more specialized models.
Yeah.
And I also quick take is like I think essentially if you have a fully interpretable language model, you have an interesting view on the domain of human knowledge, and like how does how does a language model learn things, and then suddenly it's able to write code. So anyways, I'm like, that's kind of top of mind for me, and I'm kind of like, whatever's top of mind is kind of what I'm obsessed with. But anyways, thank you both so much for coming on. It's been very exciting learning about AIGS, and I love the Trajectory office, everything you guys are doing. And part of the point of the podcast, I love capturing things when they're early, when it's authentic, when it's raw. In the same way I captured GPT-3, I captured Dolly. This is the bakztfuture recommendation. Anything you guys want to plug? So you guys have a Twitter. You have your individual Twitter accounts. What else do you have?
Yeah, it's on the website.
Twitter, LinkedIn. Yeah, we're there.
The usual. And for me, you know where to find me. Follow me, don't follow me. Please don't follow me on Instagram. I don't even know why I have my Instagram public. I'm on X too much. I'm on Twitter too much. But anyways, thank you both so much. This was awesome.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. Sweet. Thank you again. And I'll talk to you all later. Have a good one. Bye.